Steven, hit the music.
You stole my material. This is outrageous.
You wanted to say it?
I thought it was mine.
We're about to break it down.
Moments away from breaking it down.
Wow. Oh, are we going to be live on video while it plays in the background?
Wow.
That's what I said.
Oh, I thought you meant like, I didn't understand that. I just thought you meant like behind our screens we were going to sit.
I said I don't like to just sit here while the music plays.
Oh, I thought you meant like sit here with like the cameras off.
Yes. Steven, Rob, without a doubt, got him all figured out.
Not what I was
Yes. All right. A strategic misstep to get things started.
Yeah.
As we were about to go, I'm like, oh, I forgot to start the theme song. Steve's like, just do it. Say hit the music.
Yeah. And I thought that we were going to still have the screen of like the music countdown. No, Rob, this was a miscommunication. And it speaks to
That's
an episode
fine.
of miscommunication.
Hey, that on Survivor, as in life, sometimes it's hard to exactly nail down what you and your allies are trying to do. And that was illustrated very clearly tonight in a 9-1 vote that was anything but straightforward.
Well, that's what I mean. This was such a fun, like, to me, this was like what I want from a merge episode. It's like all of these dynamics that we've been seeing all the season, like come together into interpersonal conflict. And, like Jeff, because he's not on the beach, only sees the blowout vote. And I think that's why he is like, we need split tribes and we need to mix everything up. But like the dynamic of how you get to that vote is so interesting. Whoa, I lost my earphones. That it was, I'm so excited to talk about it with you. I love this episode, but before we get into it, Rob, I really want to know, what is the largest animal you could take in a fight?
I feel like maybe like a like a poodle mix, I think.
Like a vicious one or like a tame one?
I think like if it's semi-vicious.
Yeah. I was thinking like I could take a golden retriever, but only because the golden retriever would like let me win.
It's so friendly.
Yeah.
And you would
exactly.
enjoy it. You would enjoy even being taken by the golden retriever. Right. Okay. All right. Well, a lot to break down. Excited to catch up with Steven after I was in Boston last week.
Hobnobbing with
elbows. Hobnobbing with the glitterati.
I like you texted me that you were hobnobbing with the pizzarati. I thought that was very
the
good.
pizzarati when I was at Luigi's Pizza. And Steven, a lot of people have been asking me for glitterati merch. People want to be in the glitterati.
That's great. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So we're right now we're trying to source the ideas of what does the glitterati merch mean? Is it like,
are you the glitterati or are you?
I
like
think so. People
glitterati?
want to be in the glitter. I am in the glitterati.
Got it.
Yes,
okay.
and then you will want to go hobnob with them. Maybe
I
hobnob
see.
with me.
Yeah.
Glitterati on the back. Okay. All right. Well, we were hobnobbing with the glitterati virtually earlier tonight over on Chat BCC. Come on over and hang out with the who's who of the Survivor glitterati, when you can talk with us during the episode and all week long. Go to robinswebsite.com/VIP chat to skip the wait list and join us over on Chat BCC. And we're just getting the conversation started this week because we will have great week of podcasts. As one of my favorite guests to talk to, two of my favorite guests to talk to.
Someone's going to be offended by that.
Well, that I love getting Drew Basile on the podcast. That he has so much fun stuff to say.
Jeopardy champion.
He's got hot takes. That he is a very funny guy. So I'm looking forward to talking to him on Thursday. And then on our old school interview, I'm going to chat with somebody that we know well from Chat BCC, Kelly Wentworth. And so join us on Monday for that one. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're watching us here on YouTube. And you can catch everything we're doing over at WeKnowSurvivor.com. All right, Steven. So, I'm interested to get into this vote. I did feel like that getting to sort of the strategic figuring out what was going on here, I felt like it took a while, probably got like an hour into the episode before it started getting good.
Yeah. But when it got good, it was so hot, it was like
it was
really interesting. I mean, I'm trying to even think of what I mean. We had that very fun, the animal discussion. There was the the challenge choices. I thought was interesting the way that worked out.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see the stuff with people like being a little suspicious of Shaheen. And then you get into this very interesting question, and ultimately culminates in this big argument between Kyle and David, where Kyle is doing his best to protect his number one ally without trying to reveal that alliance. And David correctly is suspicious of why everyone is trying to keep Kamilla in the game.
Yeah. And it really was a interesting proxy battle where that David, we have the strong five, and it's a little confusing. The strong five ends up being it's David, Joe, Eva, Shaheen, and Kyle.
And now the strong six.
The strong five. And so David says, hey, guess what? It should be a strong six. Yeah. I've got a friend. She should be in we should make the strong five a strong six.
And you know who the strong six should be? The smallest person out here. That's the strong six.
Now,
I look at the alliances like grow to be like totally out. This is out of scope. In the design creative industry, we say this is out of scope.
Yeah. Well, I will say in Mary's defense, in terms of being a member of the maybe she's like, this is like on the Braun tribe, you have somebody who's kind of like scrappy. Yeah. You see, she glides through the mud.
Yes.
She is like very good. She's an incredible swimmer, Mary. Yeah. So she is good, but she's not big.
No, the whole premise is like the big guys are banding together, and then you have this like very thin girl who's like also part of the big guys, and like Eva, who's like she's a tough.
She's on the men's hockey team.
Yeah, right. I mean, she makes sense, but it was like when Alicia, like you said, like the Braun tribe, when Alicia was on the Braun tribe in Korong, you're like, well, she's got heart.
She's got spirit. Yeah. But I don't understand why Kamilla couldn't be in the strong six, because I thought that the beauty of this alliance, like what we saw back early on, where after the Thomas vote, yes, Kyle and Kamilla were sort of like playing that they weren't necessarily that close, but they had that conversation. It's like, hey, all four of us come from these like, backgrounds where we, share so much, and that, our families went through so much. And it sort of like really made it sound like, wow, this four, we could really do something. And in the pre-merge, before pre-swap, that Kyle and Kamilla were in a 4-person alliance with David.
Yeah.
And so it was like, and here comes Eva, who was tight with Joe and Shaheen. So if anything, it seemed like sort of a natural thing that, okay, well, now David and Eva are going to join up with this 4, and they were going to be 6. But we never really got how Kamilla, I guess, was there some sort of like physical fitness test that she could not pass that David said, no Kamilla in the strong 5.
Yeah, it was like when JT and James were racing on the beach. You got to like do a backwards race against JT to see if you can get into this. So yes, I mean, like it is a testament to like how arbitrary these alliance lines are. But like it's like any alliance like has to be, there is that arbitrary level. It's like that it's an onion. But I do wonder. Kyle's kind of in a bind because on the one hand, it sort of behooves him to be like, listen, Camilla's on. I mean, he's kind of like towing the line. He's like, she's always voting with us. She seems to really be in the same page as us. But if he says like, hey, she's my secret ally, then suddenly he squanders all this trust with these guys who, and this is David's whole thing. It's like, this is the strong 5. The strong guys are taking back the game. So it's a really tricky position for him to be in. And it is sort of an arbitrary line, but like all lines are arbitrary, all borders.
Wow, lines too, in addition to rankings?
All borders are arbitrary, It's like who decides where the end of the state is or the end of a nation is,
Wow. Okay, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. So
I want to go back to last week a little bit.
Unless it's like a river or a mountain,
if there's a river,
or like an ocean.
Yeah.
That's a somewhat non-arbitrary line.
Non-arbitrary.
Yeah.
Sure. I want to go back to last week's episode because you and I didn't get to talk after last week's episode. By the way, Sam Fallon did an incredible job last week.
He was great.
Rave reviews.
Yeah. There's been some A plus, sub-ins here. Owen was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Was he this season or last time? Who knows?
That was, I believe, last season.
Wow.
Time flies. But so going back to last week, I'm really surprised that David is so down on Kamilla. Now, I don't remember, was it Kyle and Kamilla, or was it just Kyle who end up going to David and saying, hey, Shaheen has an idol.
It was specifically Kamilla who said that, which was so funny because then like then David thinks that that Shaheen and Kamilla are together, and that because Shaheen has this idol, they should vote out Kamilla.
But she was trying to throw him under the bus last week. Was this like a misinterpretation? Because that's the thing that I didn't get. It was like Shaheen says, hey, you know what? I'll be partners with Kamilla. And it's like, oh my God, what a reveal that they must have a final two. So, and I don't know if maybe this is coming more from Mary, who is sussing this out, but that I didn't understand why if they're trying to get Shaheen potentially voted out on the Cedric vote, why do they come into this vote feeling like, hey, you know what we need to break up? Shaheen and Kamilla.
It does feel like there's like, and obviously when you're on Survivor, you're having constant conversation. So like the one conversation that makes it to television, which we over-index on, is probably, it doesn't necessarily loom as large in any individual player's mind. But, it seems like there is a real burgeoning relationship, at least from Shaheen's perspective, right, with Kamilla. He says, I feel tight with Kamilla. I want her to be my like extra person in this group. Kamilla doesn't feel that way. She's targeting Shaheen, but like obviously there is something there that David is correctly picking up on, right? He's correctly intuiting that, oh, my other like Shaheen wants to be in this relationship with Kamilla. It makes a lot of sense in that David is totally right that if you see that, like you want to sever it to like bring that person in. And then when Kyle pushes back so hard on Kamilla, like, this is David again, like correctly into it. It's like everyone is really working hard to protect Kamilla. I really need to get Kamilla out of this game. Like that is a correct series of logical, statements. I want to like, so yeah, I've got more to say, but I'll pause.
Yeah, so this is like very complicated because I think that like in another world where then the threat wasn't coming for Kamilla, I think that there was a possibility that, Kamilla and Mitch were working on trying to get Siva back together and that they wanted to make this play against Shaheen. And so ultimately, like this play, a potential overplay by David and Mary to say like, hey, we need to go after Kamilla ends up forcing, Kyle to really push on Joe to ultimately get them to make the move to take out Chrissy at this tribal council. But really, like, had that not have happened, it might have been Shaheen who goes home in this vote.
Yeah, because there did seem to be real. Well, I actually don't think that's the case, because I don't think that was ever in the cards for David. Like, I think David is, he was even barely entertaining that in the conversation.
That's true.
When they're actually talking to him about
and they
it.
were counting on him potentially. But, it really did ultimately force the Chrissy vote, which may or may not have been the case.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's right. I think they might have like considered more broadly. It did seem like Chrissy was the likeliest to go home from that group. Certainly we knew she was throwing out Joe's name, just throwing out a lot. And she was so vocal at that other tribal council. I think that Chrissy maybe blames herself for talking her way out of the game. I think she's probably going home in that spot anyway, unless Kamilla goes home. I mean, it's funny you say that David overplayed here, and they did push too hard. What I think this episode was missing was a confessional from Mary, because she seemed to be the one who was pushing this harder than anybody, at least to start, right? And then we have her on Reward. She says, this is the one where I'm really going to speak up. This is the one where I really want to put my foot down. And we never got her really talking through her thinking of why she was pushing so hard on Kamilla.
Yeah. What do you think she's seeing?
I mean, maybe she's seeing, that Kamilla is what David's seeing, which is that Camilla's competing for her spot as the 6th in the strong 5.
Yeah. And so do you feel like that, I mean, to go back to, your time in Cambodia, was this a little bit like where, you and Spencer were trying to be vying for the same spot?
Yeah, I think that probably is right. Well, it is sort of there's that element to it, right? Where your own position in the game, you really work towards, but then there's other people who are clawing towards that exact same position. And so of course, that person is going to be your biggest threat. Mary, who's existing on the side of this power structure, of course, she most wants to, the people who are most threatening to her are not the people at the center of the power structure, but the people who are also clawing to be on the outside of the power structure.
I'd love to look at this from the perspective of Joe, who is kind of like the patriarch of this alliance, where it seems like that in, maybe like the godfather of okay, David is coming to him with something. Kyle is coming to him with something. And it does seem like that he's the one who's going to ultimately like decide, all right, this is the way we're going.
Yeah. It's really amazing, right? That this guy who is very strong, very well liked, in an explicit duo with his other person, like basically unbreakable. They're always like cheering for each other. You know, at the challenge, everyone was like, "You go, ladies," and Joe was like, "You go, Eva, and only Eva." You know, it's like there's like no ambiguity about it, and like nobody is coming from him. For him. And I thought Chrissy said it really well and interestingly at Tribal Council, where she says, you know, in any other season, this guy is the target. How come on this season he's not a target? And like, this is why this is one of the reasons I love David. And there was this big debate online over the past week of like, you know, David, like great addition because he's so different from recent casting, or like, you know, kind of annoying because he's not going, you know, he's not playing strategically. He's doing honor and loyalty, and that's such BS. I don't think actually a lot of people were saying that, but that was a straw man that a lot of people were reacting against. And it's so fun to like have someone who isn't a Survivor super fan, who's extremely handsome, you know, who's going to like push for this, like this strong thing, you know, it just like creates a whole different set of strategies and a different way of playing, where these assumptions that we've been making for all these past seasons, oh, this duo, you got to target them, this guy's this way, you got to go for him, are suddenly in flux, and like players have to like figure out how to react against that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sure that David, I think that, is it fair to say, is coming to be the villain of the season?
He's sort of like the anti-hero. I mean, in my mind, he's the hero, or the, you know, but I mean, Joe's the hero. Yeah,
sure. But I feel like that the editing, I feel like, was sort of like, okay, is Kamilla gonna get through this? Like, I think that was she was like that was the story I feel like that the show was telling tonight of, are Kyle and Kamilla gonna be able to figure this out against David, who's sort of pounding the table? No, we have to get rid of Kamilla. And as a story, we've been so invested in Kyle and Kamilla. And so I don't mean that there's anything evil about David, but I just feel like in terms of like the narrative that we're seeing, like it's not necessarily putting David forward as the protagonist. Is that fair to say?
I don't necessarily agree with that. I mean, maybe on the margin, I agree with that, but I do think like what's so great about Survivor is that, you know, some people are going to be like, that guy, that like strong guy is so annoying. Like, and like the strategists like are like working against him. And other people are going to be like, yeah, that guy is like thinking a different way. And like those weasels over there are lying to him. You know, I mean, it was like on Cambodia, where some people were like, gosh, Savage is such a bully to Fishbach. And other people were like, gosh, that Fishbach really is so pathetic. Like Savage is so accurate, you know, like, no, I mean, I certainly saw that on Twitter. You know, I do think like what's great about reality TV is like everybody's kind of watching it from a different perspective. And, you know, I think that is really true here with this David / Kyle Kamilla, you know, back and forth.
We never got to see how the issue got resolved to ultimately get 9 people on the same page. What do you think that conversation looked like?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I do wonder. And you know, Chrissy says like, well, maybe it happened. Like she kind of hinted that she thought she talked her way out of the game and that like it was something she said at Tribal Council. I don't think you get a unanimous vote in that situation. Should she have played her shot in the dark?
I think so. It's going to be my first question for her on Thursday of, why didn't she? What confidence did she have that the vote was going to be going against Shaheen?
Yeah.
Mitch didn't even vote for Shaheen.
Yeah, well, that's right. So that's right. I mean, I was kind of wondering like where Mitch and you know Star were going to be, because they were sort of like explicitly out of the conversation. There was that very funny like brief scene where they're like, "Oh, looks like Survivor's happening over there." But yeah, so what was that conversation? Because David really pushed back hard on that. And I bet we get a confessional from him next week, like leading out, like I didn't want to do that. I thought it's the wrong move, but I had to give in.
So I suspect that Joe is the person who ultimately says, all right, everybody get together.
Yeah.
Here's what we're doing. I have to say, tell me if you think that this is really off base here, but I want to compare Joe to a Survivor All-Stars Boston Rob. Now, I don't think that from a strategy perspective, they are nearly the same person, but I do think that there is like some leader vibes that both of them give off. And both of them had a very public relationship where it was totally clear to all involved, this is my number one person. Rob with Amber and Joe with Eva. And instead of where like Chrissy is saying like, is this the upside down? Why aren't we breaking this up? These two people are together. What are we even doing here? And you definitely saw some people saying and thinking that in Survivor All-Stars, and maybe like I might have been thinking it in my head and not saying it out loud, but for whatever reason, that people have a lot of reverence for Joe. They're willing to follow him, that he has like this quiet confidence. They're not too concerned with, Joe and Eva. And rather than trying to break it up, they are flocking to be a part of this, and better to not upset the apple cart. It feels a lot like the, post merge game of Survivor All-Stars, minus sort of like all of the bitterness and everything with like Lex and Kathy. We don't have that part yet, but where you have Chrissy coming out of the game, like kicking and screaming, hey, everybody, what are you even doing? And it's really Joe calling the shots.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really interesting comparison. I think that's a really good comparison. And I think Joe benefits here from having David, who is so much more vocally like, I'm the guy all about the strong five. And he's the one who's getting into the scraps at Tribal Council. And he's the one who's, arguing back with Kyle, so that gives Joe this position to be in the middle. And let me give you a different returning player season that I actually think is going to be an interesting comparison here too. Maybe not physically 1-to-1, but I wonder if Joe is a little bit like Cochran and Karamoan, where you have Philip Shepard, who is the David of the season, and he's the one like, this is our alliance, here's our squad, this is the team. And then Cochran is kind of like the guy who's off to the side. He's got his relationship with Dawn. That's like this unbreakable bond that they have. And so everyone kind of is coming to Cochran as the person in the middle there.
Yeah, I mean, it could still be just Boston Rob in Redemption Island, and that here's Philip, and winding Philip up, because you get the sense that Joe could sort of like turn to David like, all right, David, that's enough. Yeah. And David would kind of back down, because I really just feel like, however this came to be, I just feel like that Joe was like, all right, we're doing Chrissy tonight. And of course, that Chrissy was the person who was at the last Tribal Council talking about Joe. Kyle comes back with the information about, hey, that Chrissy is still talking about Joe. So at the end of the day, I think it does serve Joe to see Chrissy go home. Yeah. And that I don't know yet about Kamilla. I'm not sure about, should Mary be in the alliance? Let's just sleep on it. And in the meantime, let's get rid of the person who is most vocal about breaking up Joe and Eva.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, but on the other hand, like Chrissy also had from what we've seen, the least social traction. She was tight with Mitch, but she wasn't going to get a real counterinsurgency going in the way that it did look like Kamilla might have the wherewithal to pull a move or two, And so, I think for Joe's ideal move here is, I think, for Kamilla to go home. Right. And it's for all the reasons that David is saying. It's like, it cuts off Shaheen's options. It cuts off Kyle's options, and it gets rid of someone who is very intelligently playing the game.
Yeah, it may come back to bite Joe in the butt. I'm just not sure necessarily if that is the right call in terms of okay, you cut Kamilla free. Does that also now destabilize your alliance with Kyle? Does he end up trying to pick up some of these other pieces of send him back to Chrissy and Mitch? Is there maybe...
I don't know. I don't think that's Kyle's end game is
I'm just trying to think of
jump from the winning alliance to the losing group. Yeah. Let's talk about it from Kyle's point of view, because I'm curious, do you think Kyle went too hard? I mean, obviously he got his way, right? So Kamilla stayed, and that was good. But in that argument, I was really wondering how hard do you push for your your number one ally here?
Yeah, I think that Kyle did a pretty good job here. I think that if I was going to critique anything, I think I would have made it a little bit more about Chrissy is coming. She's trying to get Joe, as opposed to hey, instead of trying to save Kamilla more, could he have presented it the case as more as Chrissy is she's going after Joe? Because I really was surprised they didn't even try to split the votes here, where, if Chrissy hypothetically had an idol at this Tribal Council, that she ultimately would have like flipped the entire vote with 9-1. That I just feel like that if she was talking about we have to get out Joe. She's the leader of the resistance against the Strong Guys Alliance, the Strong 5 or 6. Then she's more of a threat than Kamilla, who's not even. She's with us. She's not even working against us.
Right. Yeah. That's a really good point. I mean, it's yeah. Why? Who did she vote for Joe? Who did she vote for?
She voted for Shaheen.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. She voted for Shaheen. Yeah, very, very dangerous and interesting. I mean, it's interesting that we saw so little from the people who felt left out of that vote, like what they are thinking. Like, where was Mitch here? Mitch is really interesting because, like, I mean, obviously they can't give us the Mitch confessional because then it sort of is a giveaway of who's going home because, that's the interesting thing from Mitch's perspective is why did he vote for Chrissy? And we probably get a confessional from him next week. Like, oh, I hated to lose Chrissy. But I had to go with the group. I am really curious about that conversation and like how he came to that, sort of.
Yeah, I'd love to go back to something that Sam Phelan said last week with you that I hadn't even been thinking of. But I thought he had such a good point about that. He felt like that Chrissy really made a mistake by not trying to get with Say and Mitch and maybe even Star to blindside Joe and Eva at the last tribal council, where it does really feel like that is a completely game tilting move. And the kind of thing that you like when the producers do the split tribal council, I have to feel like that's the kind of thing that they're hoping happens of here's a big move that happens because of the breakdown of this group into a certain way that would not have happened had the big group stayed together.
Yeah.
And it seemed like you had those pieces together, but people just, I don't know if it was necessarily like, hey, I just want to make the jury. I just want to get through this vote. And so let me just not rock the boat too much. But I feel like a move was there.
Yeah, and I said that like I think people play more conservatively until the jury starts. So like it's probably worth starting the jury an episode or two earlier. But like we talked way back in the day. I don't know, it was like a year or two ago, but about like whether that these split votes or these split groups end up basically being somewhat conservative decisions that reinforce the existing power structure. And is that still the case? Because at one point that was sort of surprisingly the case in the early 40s.
I think that what's interesting is that they used to do it at 10. And I didn't like that because I felt like, well, hey, we're losing a final 9 vote. 10 is big and 9 is really big in a Survivor game. And when we do the split vote at 10, then we end up losing our, final 9 vote, which is always like a big moment in the season. But everybody there had already made the jury. So we ended up seeing in the early 40s, like some bigger moves being made where, Ricard and Shan and Erica target Nasir.
Right.
Evie, Evie was kind of down and out at that point in time. But then, people were like taking bigger shots. James Jones goes out at that point. But then starting, I think in 44, 45, like we push it back, which I liked, but now we're just getting into sort of like, hey, well, if we get through this vote, we'll be in the real merge. We'll be on the jury. And so I think that people are a little less likely to do something more aggressive.
Yeah, you really do. People do really like tighten up right before that jury spot, and not in a not surprising way, because they really don't want to like screw it up.
Yeah. And I feel like that in the new era, at this particular point in the new era, like I used to complain more about, because you gotta have something to complain about, Stephen. I used to complain more about the pre-merge. And I kind of feel like that, like the pre-merge is Full Tilt Boogie. The pre-merge is Club Condo. The late game is still exciting.
Yeah.
The early merge is the new like soft underbelly of the season where nothing that exciting happens.
Yeah, it's really true. And it's too bad because like the merge episode was always like, whoa, like so much chaos is happening, so much action. But now it's like half the people, for all the 40s, like, early 40s was like half the people are immune. Now it's like you're not even actually merged and only half of you got to feast and like the jury is in 2 votes. So there's like, it becomes a much different, more conservative, like less full tilt boogie game.
Yeah. And it's such a simple fix. I feel like that you go from these 3 tribes where you have like maybe 2 votes, maybe 3 votes in 2 tribes, and just do the merge at 11.
Yes.
Okay, you've made the merge. You're on the jury. Now let's go. And now everybody can play hard, and you don't have to sort of like pussyfoot through like, oh, I'm so close. I don't want to just screw it up right here. And then I didn't make the merge. I didn't get my buff. I didn't make the jury. It's people are too tight at this point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, and you see, I mean, again, like nobody wants to like I mean, the fact that Shaheen got out, I mean, again, like I do think maybe if it wasn't David specifically last episode who was there, like maybe they do vote out Shaheen, but David is so much like the strong 5 guy, and this is my like he's banging the gong gesture. That's what I was saying. So that like people are, you know, you don't want to like piss him off totally. You know that like by voting out Shaheen there, you're really alienating David, which is then going to have repercussions, you know, with Joe and Eva. So, yeah, in a less, maybe without David there, they do take that shot.
Steven, on Friday, I will be taking calls from the patrons once again. It's our weekly Survivor Q&A, where I take live calls from the patrons every Friday at 3 p.m. I'm sure we'll have lots of questions about what's coming up next. But Steven, what do you think is going to be coming up after this now that we have our final 9? We have really this episode last season, this was the Saul vote. And that was really the Saul vote really launched the second half of Survivor 47. And while this was not like a mad scramble necessarily like that vote was, that it does feel like, I think the name of the episode is like, There Will Be a Rift, that it feels like that there is this fault line in the season now, which is going to set up the whole end game.
Yeah, it does seem like this, you know, David being so fixated on this question of like what's really going on with Kyle and Kamilla is kind of going to be like where the drama is, right? Of like David versus like Kyle and Kamilla. Yeah.
So how do you think it shapes out?
I don't think it ends well for David, to be honest with you. Like my guess is that I do think with like, I think Joe and Eva are going to do really well here because again, like they're playing the middle. I don't think anyone is like going for them. I think if the fault is between David and Kyle and Kamilla, then that's great for Joe and Eva, you know, and especially Joe, because like, again, like nobody's focusing on them as this like physically extremely competitive, super strong duo, you know, lots of advantages now. You know, Eva's got an idol. Now she's, you know, presumably next week, she's going to have some secret advantage, which I'm really looking forward to. And it becomes like, you know, the strong guy versus these like strategic players. You know, you've got Mitch and Star who are kind of like at the margins of that. But I do think that like Joe and Eva are going to be able to navigate the middle and kind of like make their way to the end.
Yeah, this is a very interestingly structured season here at the final 9, and we could really start to see it starting to like have this very fun finish where you have these 3 pairs, and Jeff talked about this being a season of partnerships of Joe and Eva, David and Mary, and Kyle and Kamilla. So basically, you have these. Is this voting blocks?
No, I think this is alliances.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So you have these 3 pairs, and then you have Shaheen, who is mostly with Joe and Eva, but is probably the player most capable of flipping between any of these other pairs. And then you have kind of like these 2 outliers in Mitch and Star. And as we saw, like demonstrably, just left out of things. They're just basically pawns on the chessboard right now for anybody to pick up. So how do these groupings come together on the next vote?
Yeah. And it so much depends on like, do they want to ride it out for one more vote or not? And, you know, I mean, Kyle was talking about it's 10, we need to make a move soon, or like, you know, and everyone is sort of aware, like strategic players need to make a move soon, right? Like that was kind of the narrative. I think even David said that, right? Who says like, you know, these people like Kamilla, like they know that this vote, next vote, these are the times to make a move. I don't really necessarily agree with that. I still feel like the later you can make the move, the better. You know, wait till 7, wait till 6 in this day and age. Like, take a breath, you know, ride it out a few more votes. You're very excited. You're excited to make a move. That doesn't mean you should make a move.
Now, we saw tonight also that Eva won individual immunity after the challenge, and then she got an advantage. And it was an interesting advantage, that something that I don't recall seeing too much in the new era, where in tomorrow night. And I'm like, well, in the next episode?
I know. I was surprised by that too. Yeah.
She is going to have the opportunity. I don't know if it's like post-tribal or if it's like the day after the tribal council. She is going to have the opportunity to go get an advantage. Eva and Joe in the center of everything with a hidden immunity and another advantage.
Yeah.
Like, could they become unstoppable?
There sort of are. I mean, and like the other thing too is that they are very, they're presumably both going to take the other one to the final four, right? Or to the final three, because like it's not one of those relationships where it's this relationship where they've both, they're presumably neither of them is ever going to betray the other one. So I mean, you really are so incentivized to vote one of them out simply because like that's 2 spots. Like each one of them represents 2 spots in the final 3 that you just do not have access to.
Yeah. Did you like that they had the hidden immunity idol clue at the reward?
I love
for
that. I missed that.
Well, let me
for the winners.
For the winner, like I just feel like it's a little
winners.
OP that the person who won in the immunity challenge also like had to get to the top 4 of the immunity challenge, gets to go on a reward. So these 4 are also like powered up. And then on top of that, we're going to hide a clue to an advantage also for the people who are already just like, coasting. I don't know.
This is the strong season, Rob. This is about the strong. Is that what this is?
Am I being like, players. Is David going to come give me a wedgie for saying this type of thing? Yeah. I just feel like, is it too much for the people who are like, are we over rewarding the people who are good at the challenges?
Listen, last season was about the strategists. It was about Rachel, and being a super fan. Get out of here, nerd.
Yeah, and I know there's a long history of hiding the immunity clues or the idol clues. Like we're watching Heroes versus Villains over on the patron feed, and we just saw Parvati pick up a napkin, and that got a clue to the idol after the heroes
that was
found
like
one.
That was I think that especially the challenges where they're like ordered, where they walk in order, and like the napkin is like placed like that. I don't love that stuff. I don't think that they do that deliberately, but it has like the odor of deliberateness, which I don't love.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that they had like place settings, did they?
I don't know.
Yeah. I got the sense that they were sort of just...
You saw it yesterday. I saw it 15 years ago.
I think that they just sat down wherever they wanted they didn't necessarily have to have assigned seating at the... if they had assigned seating and there was somebody who had an advantage in their particular napkin...
They didn't file in? They don't walk in?
I think they walk in. Parvati in that episode said, I wanted to sit in the corner so I could talk to Danielle. And that's why she ultimately got out.
So really, that's fun. That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. But... I don't know. It was only 4 people had access to it. It was also that the people that had like dominated in the challenge, like the people that lost the challenge are losing votes. The people who win the challenge not only are getting immunity and food and clues to the idol, or advantage.
Yes, win. If you stop complaining and win the challenge, Rob.
Okay, well, I'm glad this is a great segue into. I thought it was a very interesting moment, and we got this from Joe's perspective of. Everybody has to pick their partners, and Joe was sort of sitting back.
Talk about this.
And it was interesting because Joe got to sit back, and he also got his pick. It was like nobody was like, well, dibs on Eva.
Why did nobody pick Mitch? That's the great question of this episode. Mitch is like star challenge performer. I mean,
and he was Star's partner. Yeah,
exactly. Star's, and like, ends up being the first one through the first part of that obstacle. To be fair, like they sort of choke at the second part of that obstacle. But like, how does no one pick Mitch in this case? And I do think like it's so interesting because it is these strategic relationships, these social relationships that end up manifesting in every aspect of the game. Like if you're purely picking like on who I want to perform the challenge with, like I don't want to perform with Mitch, but like, because he doesn't have as tight social bonds as some of these others, like, Shaheen picks explicitly Kamilla because he wants to build his alliance with Kamilla. And I do think that it's like so funny how like it just refracts into every part of the game, like in ways that seem like you should avoid, but you can't avoid it because it's just human nature.
But that decision to pick Kamilla with the #1 pick, I think just like sat so wrong with David and Mary. Why would he do that? He must have a secret alliance with her. Why would he want to go into this challenge with Kamilla? Right. It doesn't make any sense. He must have an alliance. So where Shaheen, and we saw him do this with certainly Say last week about like, hey, nobody's talking to her. Like I should be this is exactly
Yeah.
the kind of person. So he's out there looking for, and I love that.
I was going to say, this is the Rob Cesternino strategy.
I'm picking up the people who are at the bottom and building my army. And so Shaheen is definitely thinking that way, but maybe he might have been a little too forward with that to go out and pick Kamilla as his number one pick. As opposed to, Mitch is somebody who's also like equally on the bottom, who is somebody who's, been a little bit more of a challenge performer. But, we saw Shaheen ultimately picks Kamilla. Well, Dave was like, well, I'll take Mary.
Yeah.
I'll take my person.
Right. And then they all are. And then Joe and Eva are together. And literally like we don't even see Mitch and Star get like randomly assigned together. Like,
it took me like 2 minutes for wait, who's Mitch's partner? I was
like,
oh yeah, Star is still here.
Yeah. She's so great. Like we get so little of her, but it's so great when we do get her.
She is electric every time the camera finds her. But either she's like left out, they don't tell her what's going on. She doesn't have a vote tonight.
Yeah.
What'd you think of the mechanism they used to determine? Last season, we had sort of like the reverse Jenga game where Caroline lost her vote. What'd you think about this?
Jenga. Yeah, this was a lot better, I felt like, than the Jenga game.
Yeah, I think so too, because it was like in the Jenga game, it was like somebody is going to lose and they're going to lose their vote. This was strategic.
Right. There was choice here. And you couldn't 100% game it so that you could immediately eliminate your chosen person, but you could like manipulate it a little bit. So I really did like that. And it looked like, together Kamilla and Mitch did manipulate it so that Star kind of was more likely to get the balls.
I'm also surprised that Shaheen didn't come back and be like, hey, like Kamilla really was trying to screw over Star on this challenge. Like,
yeah, but he thinks Camilla's his person. He thinks he's got an alliance with Kamilla and is probably delighted that neither of them lost their vote.
Yeah. So, but if he would have been like trying to like tell the story of what happened, it might have like ultimately ended up saving Kamilla a little bit more.
Yeah. Truly.
Okay, Steven, it's time that we need to figure something out. Of course, tricky. There are so many awards given out every single week in the Survivor universe.
Really? Are there now? I mean, what are all the awards?
They're kind of
these like imitators. Who are they?
There is no award more coveted than the Fishy.
Shouldn't we get a Fishy song? I would love that. Oh my gosh. That's all I want is like a theme song.
Many moons ago, a great and wise wizard named Stephen Fishbach created an award that would serve as a symbol of Survivor greatness. And it was known as the Fishy.
Well, it's time to see who passed the test. Who's in the fish makes the survivor the best. If you don't get it done, get busy. It's time to award the Fishy. The Fishy.
The coveted Fishy Award.
I feel like there's like a 5-second little, the part with like the sub with the text. I feel like if you just like excerpt that, like that's the stinger.
We could do that. I will go to a shorter version, but thank you again to Eric Barger who put that all together for the coveted Fishy Award, established 2009.
This has got to precede basically maybe not Player of the Week, but like what award? Like all these imitators. I mean, Chizzy was like deliberately, imitative, but like what else?
Yeah, and that's points. That's a whole different system. Yeah. Okay. All right.
It's Steven. Like more rational than arbitrary. Speaking of arbitrary,
it's actually less rational, but let's not even explore that, Steven.
Okay.
Who do you give it to this week? I think this is a tricky one.
This really gets into the nature of what the Fishy is about. I think and which is a fascinating conversation for many Fishy scholars of like what truly is it about. I think that's going to be the question, because like on the one hand, like we've said in the past, like is it the player? And Omer's point was like the player who got his way, right? And you'd have to say like Kyle was the player who got his way. His ally Kamilla was targeted to be eliminated. He pushed back. But ultimately he saved his ally. Like, that's a pretty like clear 1-to-1. I mean, my concern there is I thought he pushed back really aggressively, not aggressively, but like, like certainly he wasn't as aggressive as like I felt David was, but like, he pushed back like vigorously. And, in a way that did kind of further out his relationship with Kamilla. So it wasn't like, to your point, he didn't like finesse it with this like, oh my gosh, like, Chrissy's going so hard, and even Joe was like, why didn't you lead with that? You're like, where was this in like the conversation? Then, I mean, you do have someone like David, who I don't think is the right choice, but I think there's something to be said for David, where he brings Mary into the strong six now. So he has his person and is sort of like through force of will mandated that she is now part of the group, even though, doesn't technically meet all the criteria. He correctly intuits that Kamilla is a good person to eliminate for quite a few reasons here. And he really like pushes hard on that. And, you could even say it's a virtue that David ultimately gives in, because we've often said like, you don't want to push too hard when your allies are pushing back, and David doesn't get his way. And like, maybe that's what he deserves credit for. There's also something about Mary, where, she suddenly out of left field here is the sixth in the strong five, the last Vula standing. She is a huge
Sixth
voice.
in the strong five is a great Twitter bio.
She's like a very powerful voice here, ends up like, kind of like figuring out who is coming for her spot and, pushing for that person to get eliminated, and almost successfully, again, like not successfully. So maybe that is sort of a black mark on her Fishy Award nomination. But and then I think Eva, great episode for Eva, wins immunity, is very sly about the award, about the advantage clue in the challenge.
She's still gonna tell Joe though, right?
I think she's got to tell Joe once she gets it, but she pockets it. Nobody knows. She like sneaks off to the beach in a very convincing way, claiming stomach sickness after the taco fiesta.
Taco overload.
And then I think there's even something, maybe the most something to be said for Joe here, who we see the least of, but Joe is the one who kind of like sets up the question in the challenge of who's going to be, who's picking who, and sort of like pushes people to like make their cases as a way kind of for him to gauge where the alliances are. Then when it comes down to the vote itself, he's the one in the middle. He's the one who David's coming to push for Kamilla. He's the one who Kyle's coming to push for Chrissy and to push to save Kamilla. And, to your point earlier, he's probably the one who actually does end up making the call for Chrissy over Kamilla. Where's your head at with all that? That was a lot.
That was a lot. I think also, I'd throw Kamilla into the conversation also as somebody who like handles this news about it's going to be you, doesn't fly off the handle, like, plays her part perfectly. Even at Tribal Council is like, the cooler head to Chrissy, and ultimately doesn't even catch a vote at the Tribal Council. I do think that Joe is the person who I think would get the Fishy. I just have been really impressed with the level of control, the quiet control, a Cesar Millan type level of control over all these people, where everybody's coming to Joe and being like, well, I think we should do this. I think we should do this. And I think that we didn't get to see it, and we'll find out one day. But I think that this 9-1 vote happens when Joe's like, all right, we're doing Chrissy tonight. That's it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Joe is the right choice here too. I mean, he also gets out Chrissy, who is the person who's most vocally calling for him to be eliminated. So he, in a way, like actually does get his way. Like the person he most wants out is Chrissy. And so I think Joe absolutely wins the Fishy.
Okay. Congratulations to Joe. First Fishy of the season, right?
Yeah. Everything's coming up Joe, I think, here. I think he's really in really, really great spot.
Some say the Fishy is a broken award that awards losers for losing, but
not in this case. Yeah,
I think that I don't know if we've even had anybody who's been a multiple Fishy Award winner. I think it's been pretty spread out over the course of the season.
That's a sign of a great season, I think, is like when you see a lot of people shining.
Yeah. So great job by you, Stephen Fishbach.
Oh, thank you. No, great job by the
congratulations to
Survivor
Joe.
producers, the real winners of the Fishy.
Yes.
They're amazingly even-handed for the casting department to casting such a great season to the producers. You know, I'd like to thank all those people.
Sure. Steven, anything else on your mind?
No, we really, I think that we really hit all the points that I wanted to.
Yeah. You want to talk about the newest Survivor 50 fan vote?
Well, I'd like to cue you up to talk about it because I don't really know.
Okay, good. All right. Survivor 50, of course, as we know, is in the hands of the fans. And we are voting on some new categories tonight. Are you ready?
Please.
Because you're technically one of the fans now.
Mm.
You at one point you were so much more, but now,
Yeah.
you're technically, just a fan with a podcast.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay. All right. So here are 3 new things that we're voting for. Okay. And a bunch
Not
of
even a
these
full
Survivor
podcast,
journalists had it earlier today. Okay. All right. We have the immunity necklace, Stephen.
We can choose what it looks like.
You could choose what it looks like. Would you prefer a more ornate immunity necklace?
Oh yeah, ornate for sure. Is that even a question?
Mm-hmm.
Would you hear a more beautiful ornate necklace that sparkles on television, or do you want trash?
In Pearl Islands, they had kind of like the sword and the sash. Like I kind of like that was kind of a cool.
Oh
way
no,
to
sash was Nicaragua.
That's true. Okay. All right. Would you like the tribes to start with supplies or have to earn them?
Start with supplies. Earn supplies thing is so dumb. I mean, these people have so little. Like, my God, like we want to see them play Survivor. You know, we want to see them have energy.
Yep. And then finally, as far as twists go, would you like to see the right twist at the right moment? I'm sorry. A more straightforward game where alliances matter or twists. And the wording on
Fascinating,
this,
complex game with brilliant twists that test the players.
yes, Mike Bloom had it as the right twist at the right moment can change the game for the players in exciting ways. But some fans prefer a more straightforward game where strategic alliances are all that matters. Which are you?
I actually, whatever, like, I'm assuming that like the straightforward game still has like plenty of twists in it, you know, since like it's like, this is like their version of like straightforward versus twists. So I think straightforward for me.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, I think so. I mean,
like twists, like, you know, tell me what we're talking about.
right. For the Survivor 50 people, it's like, imagine like, yeah, well, it's, I've been waiting, 20 years to come back. And it's like, oh, I lost my vote. I'm gone. All right. Well,
Poor shot.
say la vie.
Yeah.
It was a good run.
Yeah.
All right. So there you go. All right, Stephen, let me tell you about some of the fun stuff that we have coming up. So this week, I had a great interview with Sandra Diaz-Twine. Great old school interview. Stephen, I don't often do this. Can I play a clip from my interview with Sandra?
Yeah.
Okay. Here, check this out. Okay. This was from my interview with Sandra, and I was telling her about my trip to Boston. Check this out.
After I missed I was in Boston for the live show this week. And I went to Luigi's Pizza, Sandra.
Was that where they caught Luigi?
No.
Mangione? Is that what you're talking about?
Justin from Survivor. That's his pizza. His family's pizza place is Luigi.
Oh, the one that was playing with Seth.
Yeah.
I like that it would rename the pizzeria after the place they caught the guy.
But very fun time with Sandra. We talked about everything Survivor 48 and so much more. So go ahead and
She's amazing.
Check that out. Very fun. And Kelly Wentworth this week. So we're really on a roll with the old school interviews. That Rob and Akiva roasted your pets this week. I mean, you're a pet lover. You wouldn't love that.
I wouldn't roast them.
Yeah. Over on $1 Million Secret. I know you checked that out, right? You enjoyed
I'm still watching
Secret?
it. I really like it. It's very fun. It's a little goofy, but in a really fun way.
Yeah, Chappelle and Scally had an interview over on Nothing But Netflix.
Don't spoil it for me.
Well, I don't know these two people that were from the show.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to them. That Sydney and Sam, they talked to them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both very fun contestants. Yeah.
And over on We Know Scripted TV, are you a Last of Us person?
I want to be. I just haven't had a chance to watch it yet. People like
It's
it.
too yucky.
No, I don't like yucky.
It's too yucky for me.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but a lot of people do. I'm in the minority, but check out everything going on over there. Mike Bloom and Grace Leader talking about The Last of Us over on We Know Scripted TV. And of course, I mentioned everything going on over on Patreon. Come on over and join the greatest reality TV community in the world, if I may say so. And I might, because I put it all together. robhasawebsite.com/patron. Come on over. Everybody is just some of the greatest people I've ever met.
I feel the same way. It's like, it's really like the best part of having been on Survivor is getting to be a part of like the RHAP community.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Steven. And of course, I
also made a lot of money, so that was good too.
Whoa, look at you.
Well, I mean, I was second place. It's a nice paycheck.
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, I wouldn't know.
And a great experience. A lot of good friends from. So I mean, there's a lot of great parts, but that's definitely one of them.
It's one of the top 10.
Yeah, or the top 4.
Oh,
yeah. Top 5,
4,
baby.
Top 5, baby. So yeah, check that out over there. Of course, Josh and I going back through Heroes versus Villains every single week. Steven, you guess what's coming up on 15 years ago on Heroes versus Villains?
Oh,
I don't want to spoil anything, but JT wrote a letter.
Oh, what did he say?
And he sent it to Russell.
Oh, I bet that was nice.
Mm-hmm. And
was it a nice letter?
It was extremely nice.
He's a very sweet guy. You don't know, people don't know that about you.
It's like, and you could tell Russell was going through it, and he's like,
man.
"Here,
So
I'm going to."
I bet he was there for him in a big way.
A huge way.
Yeah.
So that's going to be coming up next week on our Heroes vs. Villains rewatch. Steven, what's coming up for you?
I am in final edits for my novel, which is driving me slowly insane.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping that pre-orders are available in the next month or two, and you will definitely be hearing from me about that because I will not shut up about it at the time. But if you want to hear even more, sign up on my website, StevenFishbach.com.
Yeah. Steven, will you do an audiobook of your novel?
Well, there will be an audiobook. I don't know, I don't think I'll be able to record it. I don't know. Maybe I'll put my hat in the ring. Would people want me to record? I mean, I don't know. It's like
I think the people that I don't know. I guess that's between you and your publisher. But I think the people that love you would love to hear you read the book. That's
nice. That's really nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like I don't know. There's professionals though.
They
do voices. I don't improv.
That they might consider you a scab to this book has a scab narrator.
Yeah. Some people do, but I feel like, it's almost too close. You want to lose yourself in the story. I don't want to be thinking oh God, Steven, can't you do better voices?
Yeah. Well, I'm a big audiobook guy. And then sometimes I'm like, then I hear the person who did the audiobook. I'm like, oh, well, that's not the person that I know.
Yeah. Right. And that's upsetting. That's sort of hard for you, as you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little bit sometimes it's okay, well, I totally get why they didn't use this guy, but what are you gonna do? All right. Yeah. We love to hear from you in the comments. What did you think? Did we get it right today? Let us know respectfully. And of course, don't be, too stingy with your thumbs ups either.
Yeah. I hate a stingy thumbs up. Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't cost you anything. You get unlimited thumbs up. It doesn't even cost you anything.
Just a click. Well, some tiny amount of,
sure, it takes a calorie, but you know that you're also exercising.
Oh, that's true. You get really good finger joints.
You could be in the strong 5.
You need a good grip on Survivor. This is where you start.
Grip strength. Last week there was so much talk about grip strength, but I didn't hear anything about that. Is it ultimately a test of who has the least sweaty hands? Should people get Botox injections into their palms before they go on Survivor?
Does Botox make you less sweaty?
Yeah, that people do that.
But wouldn't it make you really puffy? Wouldn't it hurt? Would less?
I don't know how it works. I'm not a physician, but I feel that people will get Botox injections in certain places to prevent over sweating.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
I think I would do good. I don't get very sweaty hands.
Do you have good grip strength?
Mid grip strength, but I think, but very dry hands.
Yeah, you got to work on that before season 60.
Okay. All right. Well, I know what I'll be doing. Thank you so much for joining us.
In the hands of Rob Cesternino.
In the not so sweaty hands of Rob. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye. This is RHAP. We know reality TV.